Good to see you, Jamie. You look very well, and welcome to, I understand you're in the UK, so welcome to our country. Can we start with what we saw from Doha yesterday? What do you understand is the apparatus? You've worked with former presidents. How does a country such as Israel let Washington know what is about to take place? And do they do it just to let them know? Do they seek approval? Jamie, good morning.
Good morning to you. I am in London. I've survived so far the tube strike. Not so bad.
We say tube here, by the way, not tube, buddy. It's tube, not tube.
I said, well, however you say it, I try to get it right. I never quite get it right. But anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
My guess is there wasn't a seeking of approval. I think this was a real dramatic step in the wrong direction by Israel. They have gotten to a point where they seem to think they can do whatever they want in the region, whether that's attacking in Syria or now entering into what is effectively like the Switzerland of the Middle East, the place where negotiations take place. And to do that is really to essentially say, we don't care what the world thinks, we're going to do what we want. It's an arrogance that I think is self-defeating, counterproductive, and wrong. And I condemn it because the Hamas negotiators in Doha, to my understanding, were working on a proposal that President Trump supported that could end the war. And if you don't have someone to talk to, you can't end the conflict. If you don't have someone to talk to, you can't get your hostages out. They're the people who could persuade their colleagues inside Gaza who hold the hostages to release them. So I suspect the biggest loser in this attack, other than those who died in the attack, are the families of the hostages in Israel who were hopeful that this could lead to the release of those hostages.
So, Jamie, what should the mood music be within Number 10 later today when Sir Keir meets with President Herzog?
Well, yeah, I believe in diplomacy. I was a diplomat. You've got to meet with people. Frankly, Herzog, to my recollection, I knew his brother very well, who was the ambassador in Washington. I know about President Herzog's personal views. If he were in charge, this war would have ended a long time ago. If he were in charge, the Israeli government would have ended the war when it achieved its objectives, which is about a year ago, namely killing the people in charge of Hamas, destroying Hamas's military capability. And at that time, during the Biden years, I was working with the leaders of Israel and Arab countries and Palestinians on a solution. And there is a solution. You get the Israeli forces out. You bring in an Arab force to police the borders of Gaza so that Hamas can never rebuild its capability ever again. And then you get rebuilding to begin. And I think it's possible. That's still possible. But what the Israelis did yesterday was make that 10 times harder. I think the countries in the region that might provide forces or money or other solutions to this problem are not going to be prepared to negotiate with Israel right now for the, some period of time until this attack is put behind us. So that's what the Keir Starmer should be signaling to Herzog. Is there a limit to what Netanyahu's government will do, and don't they care at all about the hostages?
Jamie, we live in a troubled world. I want to take you now to Poland, scrambling NATO defences after a violation of airspace by Russian drones. What does NATO, what does President Trump, what does Britain, what should be the next step, the shoe to drop?
Right. It's long past time for President Trump to finally do what he said he was going to do, which is to put increased pressure on Russia. Everyone understands. I think I came on my first TV appearance as a State Department official, was on your show on the one-year anniversary of the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war is the most important geopolitical event of my lifetime, to have a large country like Russia invade its neighbor. And remember, in addition to all the Ukrainians killed, over 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded. 1 million, with no end in sight. No prospect of Russia achieving anything on the ground. So Trump has to realize, as European countries have realized, as President Biden realized, the only thing that's going to persuade Putin to make a new policy, that is to agree to plausible negotiations, is pressure. He's a bully. And the only thing you can do with bullies is stand up to them. So far, President Trump hasn't stood up to Putin. He stood next to him in Alaska. He took a ride in his car with him in Alaska, but he hasn't succeeded in changing Putin's position one whit. And the only way to do that is pressure, economic pressure. He's starting to do that with the tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. There's a lot more you can do in that area. Russia's economy, although it seems okay, sanctions are one of those things that they don't work until they work. In other words, it seems like they're not doing anything until the pressure builds, and then the Russian economy and the Russian leadership realizes there's no end in sight, and they change their policy. That's what we have to do.
All right, last minute or so together. You mentioned pressure. You know how Washington works better than most. There's pressure on our man in Washington, Lord Mandelson, with his links with the disgraced paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. What should Lord Mandelson do? Does he need to make a full statement? What do you take from that story, Jamie?
Well, look, I can't exactly predict what his relationship or guess was with Jeffrey Epstein. I remember when I first moved here, I think it was 2000, there were cameras and reporters all outside Peter Mandelson's house at the time because of some scandal related to a mortgage.
Yeah.
So Peter
it used to be an annual event. It's a bit like Wimbledon. He would always be caught up each year.
I think Peter's pretty skilled in the art of press management. That was what Tony Blair hired him for, if I'm not mistaken, originally. Right. But obviously, Epstein has to be condemned.
You never met him?
I never met him. I did meet Ghislaine Maxwell, I should say. I did meet her once.
Yep.
And she was very pleasant when you meet her.
Yep.
Look, I sort of feel I know people are going to hate what I'm about to say, but I always like to say things that are a little controversial. There are a lot of people who met him who didn't know that he was a pedophile.
Yeah.
And they are now appearing to be friends with a pedophile. I don't think Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein talked about girls. I think Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein talked about foreign policy and other matters. Yeah. And so I know people who've met him and suffered from the relationship. Jeffrey Epstein was a monster, but he appears to have been an interesting monster who had meals and conversations and brought people in. So a lot of people are suffering from that. And I think as long as they condemn Epstein and maybe contribute to some fund for the victims is another way to go. Yeah. That's the best you can do. But on Best Pals, I should point out that a lot of people say that Donald Trump was best pals with Jeffrey Epstein for a long time. So I don't think those words are should be overstated.
Toughest question of the lot. What's it like working with your ex, Christiane, on the X-Files? I mean, we've spoken about some people around the world. I won't use the word monsters, but you and your ex, Mrs., how does that go, Jamie?
Well, it ain't easy. We have I call it a very British divorce. We're extremely polite to each other.
Good.
We're very correct. We had lunch before we did our podcast on Monday of this week.
I love it.
But we have two topics. We talk about foreign policy and our son.
Yeah.
And we kind of leave it there. And, the British are very good at being correct with a lot of things unsaid.
Okay.
That's a British way. So I'm trying to adopt that policy.
I love it. Let's catch up next time you're in town. And good luck with the subway today. Jamie Rubin, thank you, former senior official at the State Department working under Presidents Clinton and Biden. Check out the Global Original podcast. Christiane Amanpour presents The X-Files with Jamie Rubin.